Welcome everyone to HEARTtalk, coming to you live from Kota Kinabalu in Sabah in Malaysia. It's a joy to have your company this morning in this part of the world, and it's evening and night in another part of the world. And if you have just joined us and this is the first time you're coming on to HEARTtalk live with Dr. Charles Lee, I want you to please subscribe, ring that bell so that the whole world can hear you. And remember that every Wednesday and every Friday we go live. And the reason we are going live is because HEARTtalk is about heart-to-heart conversations about real-life issues, issues that matter to you and me, issues about health, about well-being, about spiritual living, and most of all, it's about the transformed life. How do we live a life that is abundant? And we only got this one life to make it happen. Now, you know, if there's one thing that stands between me and living the full potential of life, it's not my 36 years of being a plastic surgeon. It's not my skills. It's not my ability. It's about being a good connector and an unselfish giver. These are the two components of what will cost a life that ends up with fully abundant. And, you know, we live in a world of mass communication. And the question is that everybody can communicate today, but few can connect. And so how do we make every communication, become something of a difference where we end up with connection, a powerful connection that results in lives that are transformed? And I can tell you, all of you all have just tuned in. Today, we are honored to have a guest all the way from America, from Chicago. And let me just tell you this, that he has built his life and legacy on one question alone. That has been his his modus operandi. And he comes from Chicago. And let me just say that he's a great connector and he's an unselfish giver. He's the author of the best-selling book called the NCG Factor, which is right here with me. So, I'm excited to meet the man himself. It's about a formula of building life-changing relationships from college to retirement. I can tell you one thing, I wish I had met the man 40 years ago. And even though he was in the process of conceiving the whole concept of this book, he has been a globally published speaker and trainer on LinkedIn. He's got about 30,000 followers, and I'm just delighted and amazed that he would stop and reply and ask me this one question. I'm going to tell you that in a minute. So I want you to join us and join me and all the people with me to welcome the man himself, the great connector and the unselfish giver, Larry Kaufman from Chicago. Welcome, Larry, to HEARTtalk.
Charles, thank you for having me all the way in Malaysia to Chicago. Thrilled to be here.
It's honor. It's an honor. It's a blessing. I am fortunate to have you join me. LinkedIn has got about 800 million people on board, and you have 30,000 followers, but yet you had the time to stop and say hi. And I want to ask you this one question, and I'm burning to ask you this question, Larry. Can I have your permission to ask you this?
What is the question that you would like to ask me, Charles? Anything.
Larry, how can I help you? I tell you something, Larry. I've got staff sitting here, they're taking notes. And the reason is because for the last 40 years, it's a question we say every day when the phone rings. And there has never been any depth to it. How can I help you? Leaves myself behind and makes me focus on the person in front. And I think that you have tapped into this question, which is your modus operandi, of where we are less of us, more respectful of the person in front of you. So talk to us. How did this question become a spark that has lifted and changed lives across the world? Talk to us, Larry.
I think as I've been, meeting with people, getting to know people, I started to think that maybe it just wasn't about me. And I'll say it was about me for years, Charles. I wasn't always Larry, the giver, the connector, but there was a change, a transformation in my life when that spark ignited and I realized I have to put others in front of me and find out how I could be helpful to them. And what I've learned is the more that you learn about people, you've told me about your kids, doctors, unbelievable. I don't think I could help you. You've already done a great job. But the more that you learn about people, the more that you ask and listen, do more listening than talking, I can find ways to be helpful to you. But I wasn't always like that, Charles. So that's for me, there was a time in my career where I met someone who was an attorney that I saw how he was doing things. I was told I have to meet him. He had no application in my business. I didn't know why I was meeting with him. We didn't do the same things, but
Right.
someone said, when you meet with Brian, you're going to know why you should have met with Brian. And he was my first real connector type of meeting. And at the end of our meeting, he said, I'm going to introduce you to two people you don't know. And I said, why? He said, because it's an opportunity for you to enhance your relationship base and meet new people that you don't know today. I won't say immediately after that I started making connections to everybody, but what I will say is something went off in my head and I realized that I meet with people and I have to think about how I could be helpful to that person. And it may be with other people they should know. And I have to be intelligent about it. I have to be intentional and thoughtful.
Now that's powerful because I want to take you back to, you titled this book From College. So where did this connection, the linked into yourself? But Larry, we are so full today about self. You just have to get onto the YouTube, just Google anything. It's about self-care, self-mastery, self-awareness, self-this. And what you have done is that you have linked into yourself first. So how did that connection first start? Because that's the place you're flowing from. You found yourself. There was a space in there that you connected with. And today you're on fire.
Well, I will say it didn't happen in college, right? It happened later in life. But look, we can all look back, and I can look back to my days in college. I was pre med, Charles. I would have been a terrible doctor. So thank goodness for the world, I did not continue. And they wouldn't let me continue. However, when I was in college, if I look back, I was about myself. I was about Larry, and I think probably a lot of our children, or if we look at our younger selves, we may have been more self-centered and about ourselves. And if I could go back and tell my younger self, hold up, wait a minute, start thinking about other people. How could you volunteer for a charity? How could you help other people with some type of knowledge you have that they don't have? And don't put yourself first, put them first. And so when I wrote the book, I thought I need to go back to the days of college for all these kids entering college and help them now. And then, you know what, I started thinking, you know what, it's not just from college, it's early career, it's mid-career. We retire. Well, it's not over, right?
Yes.
You should be
Yes.
retired, right? You've worked a long time, Charles, but you're still helping other people. And so I thought the book should be from college to retirement.
Now that connection is so important because when I read the book, I sourced you out because of the way you were connecting with people. That it was not just the connection part of it, but you were going to the source of where that whole connection flows through. How did that develop when you started finding yourself and you were connecting with yourself and you knew there was more of yourself than there was there? How did that translate into relationships? Because that's where the ripple starts, isn't it? It's the people around you. Sometimes if I were to sit with my wife or my children around there, it's been disconnected for a long period of time. And then I'm going to go and come into the whole dynamics of all the three in the family of NCG. But how did that translate and you started seeing transformation within yourself and with the circle of people immediately around you?
You know what? I think a lot of people have challenge in their career. So finding a job, when you're early, mid-career, later career, also internships for our children, right? So I think what happened for me, I started helping people that were challenged to find a job. And I was able to help individuals connect to a job, get an interview, get a job. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing back, Larry, thanks for making that introduction, that connection. I got a job. And then that feeling of making that connection, that introduction, or a parent saying, hey, will you help my spouse? Will you help my brother, my sister, my daughter, my son? And when I was able to actually talk with them and help them, or it's not always about getting someone the job, it's actually just giving them advice and guidance. And so I would say a lot of the giving and connecting came from the career side of things. And then as I got better at things, I realized I could be a giver and connector on many levels and expand. But it was learning more about people and their situation, their health, their family, their career aspirations, the challenges, obstacles, asking more questions, listening more. Sometimes I didn't need to ask how I could help them. I would actually be able to tell them, look, you said this, Charles, and if you're open to it, I'd like to do this for you. And you'd be like, oh my God, really? Yeah, I would love to do that. And just life transformational for me and for the other person.
No, that's powerful because the transformation that is taking place is ongoing. It's an ongoing process because we daily we are connecting with ourselves. And so let's just dive right in now to the book, the NCG Factor. Now, as a medical man, we always talk about clotting factors, and the whole thing is a cascade of events that take place. And if you take out one clotting factor, that's it. Each one is indispensable so that you and I don't have to bleed forever. You know what I mean? But the way that you have, how did you bring a marriage of these three partners together and make it a wholesome entity that is transforming lives? How did it start?
Well, I think when I looked at just the concept of networking in itself, I don't think I liked the way that we were networking. And I think we would just show up to events. And you've probably networked in your career at different medical conferences. And, maybe you didn't get to foster relationships. You just met a bunch of people. Correct. Or a couple of people at events that you hope to never see again because it wasn't maybe the best use of your time. So for me, I thought if I could kind of shift the way that we network and make it less of a, here's my business card, and more of, Charles, tell me about yourself. Great to meet you. What brings you here? Tell me about where you're from, your family. And now with the, post-pandemic, we're still in the throes of it to a degree. Tell me how you've been impacted and just learning more about people personally, because we tend to jump to business.
Absolutely.
Why not learn about people personally, some of their passions, interests, life challenges, and then so shifting networking from just being social exchange of contact information to really understanding who that person is, and even how you could be helpful to that person. And then the connecting piece, so you got NC and G, the connecting piece was we could be at an event and I may know someone at that event and say, Charles, I got to get you to Mary that's here. What you told me, come walk with me, meet Mary, meet Charles, not going to walk away. And you guys are like, oh my God, this is great. How did Larry know that to put us together? And then the giving, a lot of people think giving is financial. It could be spiritual. It could be just your words of wisdom. You've been on this earth a little bit longer than me, maybe a couple of years. You could be very giving of your wisdom. And that's a lot, like your knowledge and all that you've learned and life lessons. So you tie all those together, it becomes this formula to really change lives.
Well, that's powerful because, how do you source out a good connector from a bad one? I've been doing networking for the last 30 years because I love this whole concept of network marketing. And I remember 30 years ago, they would all gather into my clinic and I'll be talking about, Shackley and all that kind of stuff. Because I just love people just talking about that. But that's as far as I would go. I would never go and sort of build a relationship and try to find out more than what I wanted to get from them. So it was more of a taker more than a giver. But how do you kind of like go on life like this, connecting, hoping that transformation will take place? But there are some who just don't follow the line.
Well, there are, you asked about connectors. There are bad connectors and there are good connectors. And I'm not saying it's a terrible thing. A bad connector could equate to someone that just makes introductions to all types of people, but didn't get to know you and who you want to know. It's not really about the quantity. It's not that I can introduce you, Charles, to 10 people, but maybe it's to one person that just hits the mark. And I'm going to tell you, Charles, there's one person in my life that I know you need to know. I'm going to make this introduction. I just did that to someone today.
Right.
It was right in their industry. And I said, look, as I'm listening to you, there's someone I think you should know that lines up to your industry, to the world that you've lived in. He's just an incredible person. Let me tell you about him briefly. What do you think? He said, oh my God, that would be exceptional. So a bad connector could equate to someone just is just making connections at random, not thinking about your time and the types of people you really would like to know. If you take the time to get to know someone, it may not be a lot of connections. It may be a lot of connections, depending upon the network and relationships I've built. But it's the quality, not the quantity. To be a better connector, you still have to be a, a good question and I guess discovery person. So the more that I learn about you, now I can make the right and powerful connections and introductions that will be great for you and hopefully change your life and the life of the other person. The way you've done good, I know when I get that email or that phone call, Larry, oh my God. So I have an executive that reached out to me, said, because you'll relate to this, he said, my son is having a hard time. Right in our backyard is a medical school he wants to go to. And he has not heard back, and time is running out, and he's in a bad place. I don't know what to do. I got the details from him. I did some digging, and I made connections for his son. Weeks later, because I just lost track, I get a call from this executive, Larry. I just want you to know that I am so indebted to you, my wife, myself, my son. Did you know my son got into that medical school? And you were instrumental in making that
Powerful.
happen.
Now that's
Oh,
powerful.
now you can't always twist that world with medical school. So there's more to it, but it was that talking to his son and then doing some research and making those connections. And as a doctor, you probably know it's euphoric. You feel that there's this connection in your brain when you make that connection for someone. There's this powerful feeling when it works. So the
Yes.
bad connections, those bad connectors, yeah, but the good connectors, wow. And I have a lot of wow moments, but I'm not perfect.
No, I mean that's powerful. You know why I'm saying this? Because much of, at least in my life, has been one of disconnection. And the reason why there's so much of disconnection in my own life, Larry, is because I never stopped to listen. And if my eldest son was sitting down here, the number of times growing up, he said, Dad, you're not listening to what I'm trying to tell you. So, how important is this art of listening to be able to be a powerful, authentic connector?
Well, Charles, it's in our family life, in our personal life, our business life, being a great listener. And I think we're all guilty of not being great listeners to our children at times, to our significant others. We can only get better. And so I would say I've learned a lot. I've I've improved a lot. I'm still not perfect, but I really do try to listen intently. And I don't mind meeting with someone where they're doing all the talking and I'm doing all the listening and I'm learning so much because it allows me to be a better giver and a better connector to that person. But we can always improve. And so hopefully, as a result of tonight, maybe people will listen a little bit more intently to their kids.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think it goes a mile, because the way you have lived your life, the way you are touching lives. to me is remarkable because you talk about networking, and there's a lot of work that's involved in networking. People think that it's just throw the nets and you're going to get all the fish in the park, but that work, that dedication to dedicate yourself to the person in front of you when you say, "How can I help you?" That takes skill, right? I mean, that's time. And in the world that we're living in today, Larry, post COVID, I can tell you in this part of the world, it's more of survival and greed. Because they want to make up for the loss and they have no time for the person, the employee. They don't look into their welfare. They just want to make money back from what has been lost. So your book is timely, where people need to be able to respect that person that's giving in instead of actually laying it out to help them. What are your thoughts on that?
No, and I agree. And I know you say it's timely going through a pandemic and being more virtual. We have more time to foster these relationships, whether we're on Zoom or whether we get to meet with people face to face. But I always say that we've become a little more empathetic. We're really more concerned about people's well-being than we have been, because we're saying, Charles, how have you been impacted by COVID? Oh, I lost this person in my world, a friend, a family member. This is what happened to my business. And so I think, looking at the way things have evolved from the pandemic, I think more of us are starting to be more empathetic, and realizing we have to build deeper relationships and take the time to get to know people and listen and ask. And, I say it in my presentations, my speaking engagements, my podcasts. It's easy to show up and throw up. It's much harder
Yes.
to ask and listen intently and to put that other person first, no matter what. And so I always think about the other person. And people say, Larry, how can I help you? You said at the onset, well, Charles, you can help me by allowing me to help you.
Powerful. That touches on what is called reciprocation, right? If we go into the whole philosophy of, I mean, when you're helping somebody, is it okay to ask for a favor and say, listen, Larry, I'd like you to, because in this culture in Asia, we kind of like sit back and we kind of shy away from, can you do me a favor, as if it's more transactional as opposed to transformational. So give us your thoughts about reciprocation and the gift of giving. And let's go there.
Well, and I appreciate you asking that, because a lot of people say, well, hey, you give so much, you help so many people. Well, what are you getting in return? Well, I told you, it's that euphoric feeling. I feel so good to help others. And I don't meet with people. I don't offer to help people thinking what's in it for me. And that's not the way that we should do this. But there are times where you'll need that favor, like that gentleman reached out, his son needed help. But
Right.
we had a relationship. So if you're not building relationships when you do need that favor, and I won't spoil it in my book, and you read it, that there was a favor I needed from my son. And there's an individual that delivered. And so you have to read my book to hear that full story.
Right.
However, we do need favors. You can't ask a stranger for a favor. Maybe some strangers will help you. But if you have the inner circle, which I talk about in the book, the inner circle relationships,
Yes.
those closest to you, where
Yes.
now you need something, it's for business, it's for you know what, hey, I've got a sick child and I've been told they got to get in the Mayo Clinic here in Minnesota, and I don't know what to do. I can't get in there. There's a waiting list, there's a process. So maybe I step in and I can help out. You have to build relationships so you have that opportunity to ask for favors. And when you say, how can I help you? And if I've been helpful to you, and now I come back and go, Charles, remember when you asked
Right.
how you could help me? I need a favor. And there's several responses for a favor. So Charles, if I ask you, can you do me a favor? What's your immediate response? Whether we know each other or not, what are you going to say to me?
Immediately. Yeah, I would say, why not?
Okay, you're unusual, Charles. Not all people are like you, but some people may respond, of course, what do you need? Or the next response would be, I don't know. Can you tell me more what that favor is? And I'll determine if I could be helpful. And then if someone says no, then is that okay? Yeah. But that person that says no without asking what the favor was,
Mm,
you talk about a taker or a bad connector. I'm not sure that's the person you want in your inner circle.
right.
They didn't even want to listen or ask you what that favor was.
Yeah.
So it's good to distinguish between the different types of people. But remember, my wife of 33 years is the only one that could say no when I say, "Hey, honey, can you do me a favor?"
And she has your permission to say so. But
She does. She does. Yes.
I mean, this is pointed. This is timely. That's why I got so moved when I read your whole resume, or rather, your biodata, because there are so many personal things in there which you will come to later. But you touched on something which is very important, and I hope that the listeners in this part of in Malaysia, especially in Sabah, where I'm based, they are preparing to do a networking event, and the president of this company is coming to town, and I was very vocal that they need to know who they're inviting to come in, and so there was a clash of thoughts, because for them it is number, it's quantity. They say, doctor, we have to give the numbers. It doesn't matter. We just have to bring the numbers and report to the people in Kuala Lumpur. And I say, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Who are the people? So this is what is missing here, Larry. It's a quality of people who are networking, because you want to build relationships that last, right?
Right.
This is why it's important for people to know the three factors. Now, let's just, we talked about networking, we talked about connecting, and the gift of, what it gives us. Let's just talk a little bit more about giving. You mentioned that giving is a state of the mind, but it comes from the heart. It's got to be a person who has got a heart full of, abundance of joy to give. Talk to us a little bit more about the gift of giving, because that's central to to me, of all the NCGs, because I've been doing the end part of it and the connecting part of it, but the giving part of it, to put it together, is fantastic.
Well, the giving is sometimes in all of us, and we have to try to bring it out. I met an executive who was very successful, and he lost his job, and he wasn't going to be in trouble. He was okay. He was fine, but he was learning during this transition process in his lifetime, and he was in his early 50s. And I asked him, I said, "Are you part of any charitable organizations? Do you support any organizations? Have you volunteered? Have you done anything?" And I had been involved with an organization for many years that helped sick to terminal children in hospitals.
Right.
And I said, "How would you like to be introduced to my charity?" Because, we talked about legacy, you brought that up, and I talk about there's a living legacy you have, Charles, while we're here, right?
Right.
That can be impactful. The other one is when you're gone, right? And you'll never know what people thought when you're gone.
Yeah.
Why not build up the living legacy? So I said to this executive, what are people going to say about you if you just work and work and work and you're a good parent and spouse? But beyond that, what are you doing for the world? He said, "It's a good point. I'm not doing anything." And so he took that transition time to actually, he understood the connecting process because I taught him about it. And then the giving and going to be a part of that charity and seeing these children and spending time with them and their families, life changing for him. He never thought that way before. And this transition process changed him. And so giving, again,
Powerful.
giving could be, you've got very smart children became doctors. I'll bet that they were tutors, mentors, right? You could be a formal mentor, informal tutor, very good in science, right? That's what threw me for pre-med. I couldn't do anything science related. So I was going to be a good doctor. But giving is of your knowledge, giving is of your time. And there's many different ways to do that. The charity, being philanthropic, financial is good too. Nothing wrong with that, right? So there's many different ways to give, and those are just some basic examples.
No, that's powerful, because it's the source of life actually when you give. Because, you know, when you put all these three and fuse them together as one, networking, connecting, and giving, the result of that equation equals receiving, right? You know, you get blessed in that whole concept of receiving. And I think many of us, you know, work every day giving ourselves out as, you know, like doctors. We spend all our time, and I felt burnt out recently when my daughter finished after 5 years overseas. And I had to take time out to fill up the tank because because you know I was just totally burnt out because you know 5 years of working to finish in Ireland is not easy and not cheap. How do you refill yourself as a giver?
Well, I mean, for me, it's just a part of my DNA now. So
There you go. There you
I
go.
wouldn't say I need to refuel. I think the more that I give, the more that I get.
That's right.
Not that not that I'm expecting. It's just that I'm filled. I'm filled up with emotion, joy, gratitude, hearing back, what I've been able to accomplish to help other people. I love it. And Charles, I always posture myself with people I meet that I want them to think of me as an indispensable relationship to them, that they could rely upon and reach out to me when something comes up that they don't know where to go, that I'm the go-to, that I could help them. And so it could be on a personal level, it could be on a professional level. I want to be indispensable. It allows me to give more. And so if people always think of me that way, I build deeper relationships.
Mm,
Things come around, but I'm never asking, I'm never expecting, but I don't get tired.
right.
So I just don't. It's just that's what gets me going every day, knowing that I'm going to go impact someone's life today. I'm going to change lives today.
Now that's powerful, and that's a beautiful place to be when it is people and their lives filling up the joy that's within our own. And to be other centered, that you write about in your book, is the key of life, isn't it? Than to be self centered. And I think that's beautifully put. You know, as we move on, how is this a skill? The NCG factor, it's a formula. It's like a Formula One race, you know. And there's only one, there's only one person in the seat. But look at the crowd that cheers when you pass that line, and he puts his hand up and says, "I won." You know, every Formula One driver does that. At the end of the life, we want to finish well, we want to live well, and we want to complete this journey well. Um, is this a skill that anyone can learn?
It is. It is. It's funny. I met an executive. She oversees a $3 billion piece of business at a company. And she read my book. We talked about it. It was great. She loved it. She had me speak. She sits on a board, had me speak to these young female leaders, in high school.
Right.
But she reached out to me weeks later and she was so excited to tell me this. Larry, I was in a meeting and I heard something that someone said. And I said, "Hey, I need to connect you to so and so." And she was so excited because she said, "Larry, I never thought this way. Just like Brian, the attorney, I never thought that way." So I think anyone can learn to be that connector, that giver, when they stop putting themselves first and they
Right.
start asking and start listening and start reaching out to say, "Oh, what you said there, you know what? I know someone here." I intentionally built a network of all types of people so I can be a better connector and a giver. But someone just starting out, all it takes is not showing up and talking about yourself, because you said it. You put my quote out there. You did a lot of promotion, more than anyone else has. But if you lead with yourself,
Yep.
you will
You end up
leave
leaving with
with
yourself. Yes.
yourself. So if you instead show up and learn more about Charles and ask more about his family and what's going on in your world, and what's happening on the business side, what's happening on the personal side, something's going to come out the more I learn about you. And I'm going to go, hey, Charles, could I do this for you? Can I connect you to this person? You're going to go, that would be outstanding. So anybody can. But if you're talking about yourself, because people are very eager to
Mm,
meet and talk about themselves because they love themselves. We all
right,
love ourselves, right? Hopefully, it's very hard to bite your tongue,
right,
ask
right,
questions, let the other person talk. And I will tell you, many meetings I've had, someone will say to me, Larry, I know nothing about you.
right.
You were asking me all these wonderful questions. I just met a CEO in New Jersey, if you've heard of New Jersey, Charles.
Yes.
And he said, Larry, I'm a connector and a giver like you. This is one of the first times I've ever had a meeting where I get to talk about myself. And usually it doesn't work that way. And he
Right.
said, I got to have another meeting to learn about you. And
Mm.
so that's really it's really drives home that anybody could do this.
No, that's such an encouraging fact because it's a formula for living a full potential in life. You know, it's a book that needs to be read and taken to work. And because I tell you, the first chapter, your introduction in the first chapter took me a while to finish because there was so much of depth in every line that was there because you were introducing yourself in the following pages, you see. And I want to just commend you for that and congratulate you for this book.
Thank you.
But as we wind up this beautiful conversation, Larry, I know it's at night now. It's about what 8:39 in the night for you,
Yes, it is.
and it's 9:39 in the morning here, and we've just started. And my girls are smiling because the moment this is over, they're going to say, "How can I help you, doctor?"
They better.
Yeah, they better with a different flavor and a taste to it. So when you get up every morning, what comes to your mind that gives you that passion and that drive to see the day through?
Now, don't forget, I have a day job. I'm in a
Right.
leadership role. I'm in a leadership role, but I think about every day, when I get up, I go and work out. So I get the mind body connection, but then I'm thinking, what am I going to do today to help somebody, whether it's on my team, make an
Powerful.
impact, just listening to those that work for and with me, and then meeting people outside of my day to day and what I'm going to do for that person. Just like today, met with someone, and I put something in my book about setting a goal to help other people. This is not financial goals. This is not career goals. Setting a goal to help other people. So my goal is to help somebody in transition every single week. I didn't say day every day because that could be tough,
Right.
but I exceed my goal every week.
I love you for that, Larry, because when I look back and I think of being the founder of the Asia Pacific consultation on discipleship and on mindfulness, it's been a lonely journey because I don't have the luxury of having to meet people who will say, I'm here to help you. Can I help you do this conference? No, it's been such a struggle because everybody thinks of themselves as resources as opposed to being there for you. And that's the challenge that I've faced in my own life. It's been a struggle, and that's why I linked you out from LinkedIn,
Thank you.
and I found that these three things mattered so much to me because I was doing them, but I was not seeing the product of it. Networking, I love getting people together, get them all together, everybody meet, kind of, blah, blah, but I was not connecting and I was not giving them what they want. And so you have opened a big door for all of us here in this part of the world to put all three together and fuse it so that at the end of the day we receive the reward of what we have been called to do. So Larry, listen, as we close this chapter, the next chapter I want to talk to you is LinkedIn, and I hope that you'll be able to bless because right now I'm in a course with an excellent girl. Her name is Kushbu Nagalia, and she's got about 30,000 odd followers here, right here, and she is the key to all of us right now, and she's teaching and how to get LinkedIn going. Because I never liked LinkedIn. I thought it was just a job platform. You see, but when I did the conference on mindfulness, and I found that that's my bold. Those are my target people in the marketplace. And so it's been a struggle. I keep looking at the numbers every day, the connections, and I say, God, I want to touch the world, that kind of thing. But I want to thank you, Larry. And before, what are your closing points that you would like to give somebody who is now listening and they want to go and get a book? How do they get the book? How do they reach you? How do they get and dive into you, so that you become a source of an inspiration to this part of the world? Larry, talk to us. Tell us how to get to you.
Well, they can go on Amazon and type in the NCG Factor. And I know in every country it's a bit different, but if you can go on Amazon in your country, type in Larry Kaufman, the NCG Factor, just the NCG Factor. That's where you find me. Kaufman-larry.com is my website, so you can see more about me and some of my interviews and other information about me. My LinkedIn profile, Larry Kaufman in Chicago, all capital letters, so I could shout out to you.
Right.
Find me. I have a lot of content. I like sharing a lot of great insights and information with people all the time.
Fantastic. I mean, wonderful. I mean, congratulations to you, and we want to hear more of you. I hope that we can do a LinkedIn session with you. At the same time, your closing statements to anyone that you want to speak to. I mean, is there anything in your heart that you want to lay behind so that they finish the race in that one car with one driver and they got the NCG factor pushing them through?
All I'm going to say to people is put others first. Start actively listening. Stop showing up and talking all the time. Unless you're going to ask good questions, listen, and don't say, how can I help you, with emptiness behind it. You can only help others if you've learned about them, and then you can offer up something tangible and concrete to really help them and really change other people's lives.
Powerful. Well, Larry, thank you very much for being with us on Heart Talk. On behalf of Mary, the producer, and Heidi, the coordinator, we want to thank you, we want to love you, and we hope that we'll have more of you because it's not enough. Uh, and I know that you have left us as a cliffhanger now. Everybody's going to go out and get this book and start diving into it because it is, honestly, the key to a fulfilled life, because the giving part of it is the one that finishes the line. And I want to thank you for joining us on Heart Talk. Love to you, your family, your children, and all the best, Larry. We need you at this time.
Thank you, Charles, and we need you. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you.